Welcome to Kleppers Corner, Today in History, the only show where we take the date on the calendar, pull it apart like a middle school frog dissection, and discover that, yep, it's still full of weird, unsettling stuff. Today is August 14th, 2025, and let me tell you, history isn't politely walking into the room. It's kicking down the door, yelling surprise, and handing you a bill you didn't agree to pay. We've got presidential power grabs, high-stakes geopolitics, a trade war that's basically a clearance sale in reverse, a gerrymandering showdown worthy of pay-per-view, and a Middle East policy that's gone from leading the peace talks to don't at me. Strap in, because if history's a roller coaster, today's ride forgot to pass the safety inspection. Segment 1, the federal takeover of D.C. police. Liberation Day or just a really weird Monday? Welcome back to Kleppers Corner, Today in History, where history is less about dusty textbooks and more about figuring out how we got here without tripping over a flaming dumpster. And today, August 14th, 2025, will go down as the day the president decided that Washington, D.C. needed a federal makeover. And by makeover, I mean someone came in with a sledgehammer, a can of spray paint, and an attitude problem. President Trump invoked something called Section 740 of the D.C. Home Rule Act to take control of the Metropolitan Police Department. That's right. For the first time ever, the president said, "Hey, D.C., I'm your boss now. And guess what? I brought backup. Backup in the form of 800 National Guard troops, 500 federal agents, and apparently a fleet of SUVs so large that Uber is suing for unfair competition. The official reason? A crime crisis so bad that, according to Trump, the murder rate is worse than Bogota, Colombia, and Mexico City combined. Which sounds scary until you check the actual data, which says violent crime is down 26% this year. Murders are down 11%, robberies down 28%. It's like saying your house is on fire when all you did was burn the toast. Of course, the administration's not looking at 2025 numbers. They're cherry-picking from 2023, a year that really was bad for crime. But that's like judging your current weight based on the time you came home from college after a semester of nothing but ramen and regret. Critics say this isn't about safety. It's about politics, and maybe a test case for taking over other cities, which is concerning, because if Liberation Day can happen in D.C., what's stopping them from declaring Rescue Tuesday in Chicago, Freedom Friday in L.A., or We're Just Here for the Pizza Thursday in New York? Segment 2, the Alaska Summit. Land for peace or a Groupon for geopolitics? Tomorrow, Trump meets Vladimir Putin in Anchorage, Alaska. Yes, Alaska, which used to be Russian territory. Which makes sense, because if there's one way to put Putin in a good mood, it's holding the meeting in a place he used to own. The rumored goal? A land for peace deal to end the Ukraine war. Russia reportedly wants Ukraine to give up 4 occupied regions, stay out of NATO forever, and probably also send a thank you card. In exchange, peace, which is kind of like saying, if you give me your car, I promise to stop stealing your car. Here's the kicker. Ukraine and the EU aren't even invited to the main talks. It's just Trump and Putin, 2 guys who think diplomacy is a handshake, a photo op, and a mutually flattering nickname. European allies are panicking because they know if this deal goes sideways, the fallout isn't just diplomatic, it's literal fallout. And you can already see how Trump might spin it. Nobody's ever made a better deal for peace. The best deal, a huge deal. People said I couldn't do it, mostly the people who weren't allowed in the room. Segment 3, Tariff Wars. Make America pay more again. Meanwhile, the tariff war is going full Smoot-Hawley 2, trade boogaloo. Over 60 countries are facing higher U.S. tariffs, with India slapped with a 50% penalty, officially because of their Russian oil buys, unofficially because Trump likes his trade policy spicy. Economists say this will cost the average U.S. household $2,400 a year, which means if you were saving for a vacation, congrats, you're now saving for a slightly more expensive pair of sneakers. Shoes are projected to cost 40% more, apparel 38% more, and cars 12% more. So in other words, this is how America gets back into sewing its own clothes. Economic nostalgia by force. And then there's the chip ultimatum, a threat to slap a 100% tariff on imported computer chips unless companies build factories here. Oh, and the government gets a 15% cut of certain AI chip sales to China. That's right, the White House is now taking a commission. We've gone from democracy to affiliate marketing. Segment 4, Gerrymandering Wars, MapQuest Political Edition. Over in the world of partisan cartography, Texas Republicans are trying to redraw the congressional map to give the GOP 5 more seats. California Democrats, led by Gavin Newsom, say, oh yeah, we'll redraw ours to cancel yours out. It's basically a political arms race, except instead of missiles, we're stockpiling weird-shaped districts. Senator Ted Cruz has even floated eliminating all 12 Democratic seats in Texas, because nothing says representative democracy like making sure your opponents don't get to represent anyone. The irony? The group Common Cause, famous for fighting partisan gerrymandering, is now saying, well, maybe retaliatory gerrymandering is okay, if it's fair, which is like PETA saying, we're against eating meat, unless the cow was kind of a jerk. Segment 5, Middle East, from mediator to spectator. In Gaza, Israel is planning to fully occupy Gaza City and move into refugee camps, despite warnings from military leaders that there's no plan for what happens next. The humanitarian crisis is already catastrophic. Starvation deaths are being reported, and this escalation could turn Gaza into a permanent war zone. The U.S., Trump's basically saying, up to Israel. Vice President J.D. Vance says the U.S. won't recognize a Palestinian state. That's a big break from decades of American policy. Into the vacuum step the Europeans, but they're all over the place. Germany is cutting arms sales to Israel, while the UK, France, and Canada are planning to recognize Palestine. It's like a group project where everyone's doing a different assignment. Segment 6, the big picture, connecting the dots or drawing a crazy wall of yarn. So what do we have here? A president flexing executive muscle at home, transactional diplomacy abroad, tariffs as foreign policy, maps as weapons, and a Middle East peace process left on red. The common thread? Contested narratives. From crime crisis claims to best deal ever trade spins, the facts are negotiable, but the power grabs are very real. August 14, 2025 will be remembered as the day domestic governance, foreign policy, and economic strategy all blended into one big test. How far can you bend the system before it breaks? And as history shows, once you set that precedent, somebody will use it again. Maybe harder, maybe smarter, maybe dumber, probably dumber. And that's Today in History. Tune in tomorrow, assuming Alaska doesn't change hands.